Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan M.S. Pearce. Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 15th of January 2025. We're going to start in our military aid news update talking about Ramstein again. I haven't done a military aid update for a couple of days, so there's quite a lot to go through, but actually most of it is concerning Germany. So the next Ramstein meeting will take place on February the 14th to 16th, a week before the Munich Security Conference. NATO defence ministers will gather in Brussels. This is quite normal. We do this often, said the German Defence Minister Boris Pistorius. What's he doing? Well, he did a off-the-cuff, I guess, trip. He had an off-the-cuff trip to Kiev the other day. So he visited the capital of Ukraine. According to him, Boris Pistorius, the defense minister for the German government, the goal was to show that Ukraine can continue to rely on Germany. Talks are also apparently planned with the Ukrainian government, but also the defense industry representatives, and that is what happened. He met with all of those and said that Germany's support for Ukraine will remain strong and unwavering regardless of Bundestag election results. So obviously they are going through those elections that were called after a no confidence vote in the government. Boris Pistorius is himself very popular, should really be running for as the leader of the SDP, but he isn't. So it's going to be Olaf Scholz again. This will probably lead to a coalition anyway that might well involve the incumbent party, or at least they were in coalition with the Greens and the FDP. But there are different options. They could well go into coalition with, as the Great Coalition with the CDU, who are likely to get the largest number of votes. I don't think anyone's entertaining yet going to coalition with the AfD, who will probably become second. They're polling second at the moment. So anyway, the German government has also prepared additional aid to Ukraine of 3 billion euros, but negotiations on financing are still ongoing. So that's good news there. What do we have? Interesting remark from the Ukrainian president. According to him, the aid already provided by Germany accounts for around 16% of the total aid that Ukraine has received to date, says German Aid to Ukraine. Not bad, given that more than 24 countries provide military assistance to Ukraine. So Germany really are doing an awful lot for Ukraine. They are pledging a lot and delivering a lot as well. So I think there's a lot of stuff that is consistently coming out from Germany. That is, even though they continue to add to the pledge lists, I think they're doing a pretty good job. There have been delays, and there are things that aren't still there, and there are things that are long-term pledges. But I really do think Germany have done a really great job in supporting Ukraine. Now, on the list of what has been pledged is reported the Boxer RCT30. So this delivery is mentioned today, said German Aid to Ukraine, for the second time. I decided to add this to my website as pledged assistance. The quantity and delivery schedule are still unknown, but given the project has now been mentioned twice in public, that's proof enough for me. And actually, if you go to German Aid to Ukraine's website, it's absolutely fantastic. Please do that. DE Aid UA, so DE is Germany, Deutschland, deaidua.org. And on here, /EN gives you the English version. On here, he splits up the deliveries, the latest deliveries that have been talked about, and got the total deliveries and the planned deliveries, or the pledge stuff. So on here, there are still lots of things that are due to go out. 6 SLM, RST SLM, that's medium range surface to air missile systems. 14 SLS, so short range launchers. 2 MIM-104 Patriot launchers. 10 Cheetah, they're the self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, the Leopard, but actually the Dutch variant of that, and then all sorts of other stuff. And then it's these 9, down towards the bottom here, 9 Boxer RCT30 with mobile fire detection center, and lots of other stuff still to go out. So, I say they've done a really good job of getting stuff out there. There is an awful lot still pledged and still due to go. Now, these, just give a bit more information on these RCT30s. Jeff 2146 says, just to get something straight, as this might have gone over, some people said, so 9 Boxer AIT RCT30s that Germany pledged to Ukraine yesterday are not infantry fighting vehicles. They are instead equipped with a fire director controller FDC mission module, which has received the RCT30 turret for self-defense. So it does have a turret, but its main job is to be the command and control element for a battery of 6 RCH 155mm self-propelled guns, where they draw up and delegate fire missions for the battery. So they are due to get those RCH 155s that have been talked about quite a bit. They've received one, but that's going to stay in Germany for training. For this reason, only 9 were pledged, as they are to operate with 9 batteries of 6 RCH 155 each. A total of 54 RCH 155 have been pledged. So let's talk about these RCH 155s. And Germany officially transferred the first RCH 155 wheeled artillery system to Ukraine. So these eventually will become fully remote controlled. I presume they're future-proofed in order to do that. They're not able to do that yet. So that I think they operate on only 2 crew members, which is really advantageous. Fantastic. So 2 crew members in these, and then you need, for each 6 of these, they're going to have 1 fire director control vehicle, which has its own sort of turret for self-protection. So the Ukrainian ambassador to Germany symbolically received the first vehicle by German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius in Kassel. 54 vehicles will be manufactured, so that's 9 different I don't know what you call them, 9 units of these, of 6 each, and then each of them will have, as mentioned, the RCT30. Now, it's worth looking at this little tweet here from Julian Röpke. He writes for the Bild, doesn't he? I think a tabloid newspaper in Germany. He's not always 100% accurate, not always, sometimes a bit doomy, sometimes very on point. But he says sometimes it needs 3 years to make sense of certain military decisions. Best regards and Happy New Year to Patty Marins. So this is Patricia Marins, Patricia Marins, I'm fairly sure, came across her or that troll sometime back. I'm not sure they are who they say they are. I'm pretty sure not very supportive of Ukraine. Anyway, back when Julian Röpke here back in 2022, September 2022, said Ukraine buys 18 German RCH 155 directly from KMW, so the manufacturers. Delivery of the self-propelled howitzers will begin after their construction, so from March 2025. And at that point, and probably a lot of people saying this as well, I can't remember what my opinion was, like, they need stuff now, not in 2025. And she said, I can't understand why a country with 15% of its territory is occupied and without enough money to pay the monthly bills now decide to buy weapons to be delivered in 2025. Julian Röpke is obviously revisiting that and goes, sometimes it needs 3 years to make sense of certain military decisions. And actually now we're starting to make sense of some of these pledges that you will see here from German aid to Ukraine, just from Germany as an example. Some of these things on these lists and some of the decisions made in 2022, 2023, and you're thinking, they need stuff now, what's going on? Why are you talking in 3 years' time? Well, actually, they needed stuff then and throughout that time period and now and for the next couple of years. So this is about providing Ukraine with sustainable support going forward that will help them then, previously, now, soon, and much later. And that's what we're seeing. And so these decisions are now coming to fruition where it's 2025 now, and they're going to start receiving these self-propelled howitzers, and they're going to be very happy that they're receiving them. Okay, so German aid to Ukraine again. 425th Assault Regiment has apparently received German, Danish, Dutch donated Leopard 1A5 main battle tanks with additional reactive armor, drone nets, and camouflage. We'll have a little look at this and then talk a tad about what we're seeing. So that's quite a lot of cope cage, ERA, explosive reactive armor, and camouflage there. And that is the Leopard 1A5. It's a fairly old, half decent main battle tanks that have been upgraded to a degree. The operators have confirmed what we have heard before about from others. The Leopard 1A5s is a good main battle tank. It's very fast, which saves lives. It's maneuverable, it's accurate when shooting, and can operate over long distances. According to the Ukrainian soldier, the Leopard 1A5 is not a Mercedes-Benz, which would have surprised me too, but it's still a good main battle tank for the Ukrainians. So even though it's fairly old now, I'm sure it would have had improved fire control systems, so the ability to possibly acquire a target and then target it and then fire at it in a way that's better than the equivalent tanks that the Russians are using, means that this does have an advantage, even though it is an older tank. The armor is thin, right? So this is one of the issues, that the survivability might not be great, but they're putting on the ERA, the explosive reactive armor, which, to remind you, these bricks of explosives that you put on the outside. It sounds counterintuitive, but as a projectile hits these ERA blocks, they explode, and they explode outwards. That then helps to thrust the projectile away from the tank and keeps the armor intact. So you have an explosive to protect the armor. The supplementary reactive armor, says German NATO Ukraine, also seems to be a good addition to the main battle tank. Apparently, there was once a direct hit by a not further classified shell. The reactive armor fell off, but the turret of the tank remained intact. So just an anecdote to suggest that actually it works. Now, the German federal state, again, says German NATO Ukraine, busy day for him yesterday, of Schleswig-Holstein will make about 500,000 euros available for the prosecution of solar modules for Kherson. This is something I've talked a lot about, and I think that this is brilliant and should happen more often, which is a decentralization of the energy infrastructure in Ukraine and production, such that instead of having the complete reliance on these huge thermal power plants or whatever power plant it is, that then gets struck by the Russian missiles, if you can decentralize that and have localized production, including on buildings themselves, such as from solar power, then okay, solar's not going to be perfect in the wintertime. So, solar, wind, whatever it is, a mix of decentralized power, localized power production, then you can make your infrastructure more resilient. You can give more reliable energy to, hopefully, to critical infrastructure that needs it. And so the Russians would have to take out all of these individual energy points, energy production modules, in order to properly affect, I don't know, if they want to stop a hospital from working or this factory from working or whatever. The more that the Ukrainians can do stuff like this, then the better, I think. And that's not really from an environmental point of view, although that's great as well. It's actually from a practical security point of view. This was announced by Minister President Daniel Günther during a joint press conference with Alexander Prokudin, governor of Kherson Oblast. After less than 2 months, the first 300 solar modules have already been delivered to the Kherson Regional State Administration. A further 200 solar modules will be delivered at the end of February, and hopefully these, can be put on top of critical infrastructure that desperately needs it and keeps power flowing. In these times of today they've announced that they're going to have scheduled power outages. Of course, if you're having scheduled power outages and you've got those actively giving you power, then at least you've got something, right? Now, moving on from Germany to the UK, the UK has pledged to maintain comprehensive support for Ukraine's defence industry, including funding for air defence systems and long-range weapons production. Ukraine's Defence Minister Rustem Umerov, during his working visit to the UK, has said, so he's been in the UK. Now, the UK is in a bit of a desperate situation at the moment with regard to money. We're very, very short on money. There's a big black hole, and things are not looking good economically in the UK, although inflation the rate of inflation has dipped below what we thought it would be, but it's still obviously, there's always going to be inflation, but it's lower than it was previously, so that's good. But yet things are not looking good economically in the UK, so it's quite a big thing for us to continue with these kinds of announcements. The UK is to finance production of air defence, long-range weapons to Ukraine, says Umerov. Quote, the UK has already invested in the production of our weapons, and this collaboration continues, he said, meeting, I presume, John Healey there. So Max24 has also said this. Special attention to the meeting with John Healey was paid to the development of the Ukrainian defence industrial complex. So the investment from the UK into the industrial military complex, rather like the kind of Danish model there, or perhaps exactly the Danish model. Now, the UK is to increase the Martlet lightweight multi-role missile production and deliver 650 missiles to Ukraine, according to Army recognition. The UK has committed £162 million to ramp up the production of the LMM and supply 650 of these advanced missile systems to Ukraine. Now, I gave you the summary the other day of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group and what the US had been doing. It was a Pentagon statement of the summary of all the things they've been doing, splitting up into different areas. If you remember, I talked you through that. And they mentioned actually the LMM production being scaled up and the effort that had gone in through the UDCG. And here we hear now that that is indeed taking place. So the Martlet, the LMM, is a lightweight, versatile missile with laser and infrared guidance designed for precision strikes against drones, helicopters, and no-firing aircraft. So these get used in both kind of man-pad situation. You can have a tripod with 3 of them on. You can put them on vehicles and helicopters, kind of like sort of Stinger type thing. Okay, rows of Ukrainian Ratel S UGVs are ready for frontline service. This is fantastic. Look at the number here. And we were speaking last night on a live stream with Operator Starsky. Go and check that out. Jonathan Fink and myself chatting to him. He was talking about how, this year is going to be the year of the unmanned ground vehicle. Lots of people saying that. We just had the Khartia regiment, I think, or unit the other day having an entirely robotic unmanned attack took place involving shaping operations from the likes of, won't be exactly looking like this. These look like they're possibly modular, so you can put different things on these, and you can have turrets and mine layers and all sorts of things going on. So, good news that the Ukrainians seem to have quite a lot of those, and hope that they get used effectively. The Russians will obviously be ramping up their production of UGVs. I think they've been kind of a little bit ahead of the game. I don't know capability-wise, to be honest, but certainly they've been throwing them on the battlefield, I think, sooner than we've seen the Ukrainians do that. Now, Ukraine has required 130 F-16s to effectively counter Russian advances, says Vladislav Seleznyov, a Ukrainian military expert. The Russians are likely to cease operations at Donetsk Oblast border and could launch an offensive into Dnipropetrovsk, he added. Now, I don't know exactly how many they've got at the moment, but it's obviously not that much. I think they're on course to maybe receive, it's below 100 still. So they would need, if they got all of their F-16s that they're due, is it not something like 85? But so they would still need considerably more in order to get up to 130. They're obviously also going to receive an unknown amount of Mirages. I think so far we're talking about maybe 12, but it could be more than that. Then rumours that the French might completely phase them out, and then the Dassault has been asked to ramp up their production of Rafales that are replacing them, so they might get the rest of those Mirages. And then there are hints about Gripen as well. But certainly they need more planes and more pilots and more maintenance crews, which is a frustration that they've been sending maintenance crews into the infantry units. So they need more F-16s, but they are. I'd love to know how many they've got flying right at the moment, to be honest. Now, we'll move on to talk of personnel. Today, says Zelensky, I discussed with Macron, which would be yesterday now, the issue of 2 days ago, the issue of the deployment of foreign peacekeeping forces in Ukraine. Now, let's talk about a few different peacekeeping initiatives. But before we do that, let's stay on France. Now, the French Special Forces have conducted a top-secret exercise late last year in preparation of a potential intervention in Ukraine, says French aid to Ukraine. When French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer once again spoke of the possibility of European forces on the ground in Ukraine last week, the French armed forces had already been making preparations for such a scenario. In the last months of 2024, the French army had a several weeks-long operational preparation maneuver on a French training ground kept top secret. We understand that the exercise, dubbed Percé, was in preparation for a potential intervention in Ukraine, to counter a Russian offensive from Belarus. It was reportedly based on experienced feedback from the Ukrainian maneuvers that managed to contain the Russian invasion in February 2022. The entire French Special Land Action Command, the Commandement des Actions Spéciales Terre, or CAST, trained for a week to test personnel and equipment. The units that make up CAST, such as France's prestigious 13th Parachute Dragoon Regiment, 13th RDP, assembled for the exercise on the terrain with similar features to that of the bend in the Dnipro River north of Kyiv. The purpose of the exercise was to train teams in deploying operators and drones to carry out missions in a hostile river setting, similar to what could take place in Ukraine. The performance and equipment of the 3,200 CAST soldiers were tested in the space of a week. The teams running the drill focused on their tactical drone skills, jamming and interception capabilities, and the effectiveness of their data fusion interfaces in high-intensity warfare. Wow, so it's not just about shooting guns anymore, it's about data fusion interfaces in high-intensity warfare. But good news that the French are serious about potential outcomes, potential maneuvers from the Russians, and are wargaming those and are training. Now, a European defense official has told CNN there were, quite, active discussions about how NATO nations might deploy troops to assist with a demilitarized zone if one became part of any peace deal and they were requested. This is not at all surprising. You'd expect NATO to be talking about this. Putin has tested the West's resolve over Ukraine. Will Trump force its collapse, says CNN World. And in that article talking about potential for providing troops in a demilitarized zone. Thing is that the US is not up for that. At least Trump is not up for that. Doesn't want US troops there. So I'm pretty sure that if NATO was involved, it would be without the US involvement of boots on the ground. Lithuania, though, has not ruled out the possibility of sending its troops to Ukraine. The Foreign Minister Kęstutis Budrys stated that if Ukraine requests Western countries, including Lithuania, to deploy troops, Vilnius will consider the appeal. The matter will be discussed with allies. Of course, it will need other nations, but Poland the other day said, probably not us, we're too close neighbours, if you like, but you want Poland, Germany, France, UK, the Baltics, and the Nordics to be involved. And I think you're more likely to have that kind of willingness from those. Maybe not Germany, maybe not Poland, though, sadly. The EU has given 150 million euros more cash to Ukraine and Moldova. This time it's for humanitarian assistance, says Tim White. And finally, just one little thing on the Russians. Here we have 10 kilometers of fiber optic cable being rewound into a Russian printed spool for FPVs. The new Chinese machine takes 100 minutes to rewind 20 kilometers, and the 10 kilometer spool is seen to weigh 1.35 kilograms. So these are, fairly carryable. So if you're thinking, well, 10 kilometers is 1.35 kilograms, then 2.7 kilograms for 20 kilometers. And actually, you put that on a Baba Yaga or on an octocopter, and you've got plenty of space for quite a lot of munitions. And then that's a real problem for the receiving end of those munitions, because these things will be able to travel 20 kilometers without electronic warfare interference. The same source, Roy, says a 10-kilometer spool is tested with a high-speed unspooling at different angles. The remarkable fineness of the fiber optic is evident. So these are really thin fiber optic cables. Quite incredible there. It said previously, this is in November, the Russians are rapidly expanding the production of the fiber optic cable-controlled FPVs, as well as purchasing commercial spools from China. Bulk fiber is wound into printed spools in a new Russian facility. This will significantly reduce the cost per FPV, and that's obviously what you're now seeing being made. Lots for the Ukrainians to be worrying about if they're starting to make these at significant scale and at a reduced cost. Okay, that's enough from me. Thank you very much. Quite a bit to talk about with regard to military aid. Hopefully it was of use and interest. Take care and I'll speak soon.